This is Infinite Cataclysm. You may have seen my last video where I put out a rough guide to this Cataclysm build. I used Cataclysm to level all the way up to 100. So if you're still leveling, check out that video. But if you're starting to get to the end game and you want to push this as far as you possibly can, this guide should help you out. The gameplay you're seeing is from Pit 100, as well as the tier 5 compass I popped. This build lets you keep Cataclysm up all the time, and it's our primary source of damage. In most of the content you do, things will die before you can even get close to them. And because of some cool mechanics that I'll talk about later in the video, we're able to keep overpower up all the time. But if you guys like this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I recently moved to Korea and I have more time on my hands, so I'm trying to put out videos consistently for you guys. So make sure you keep me up to date if you like the direction I'm going with the channel. By the way, all of my builds are on Mobalytics, so if you click on the link directly under the stream, you'll be able to see every build that I put out. So if this isn't the one for you, make sure you check out some of the others. This build has insane AoE, it's very fast, it's got crazy DPS, especially in the early game. It feels broken in the early game. It has great survivability, and its weakness is that it lacks ways to scale past a certain point in the pits. So it has far more than enough damage for most of the content you're going to be doing. Now let me explain some of the interactions of how the build works. Mjolnir Ring is going to give us unlimited spirit while we have Cataclysm up. It's also going to increase the Cataclysm duration. Not to mention we get a massive damage multiplier while it's up. That unlimited spirit is utilized by Shred in order to give us enough mobility to keep up to enemies. If we didn't have Shred, we wouldn't be able to dash through enemies with our Flicker Step in order to reset our ult cooldown. And this is a big part of the build because we need to reset our ultimate before the cooldown is done. And the reason for that is because we're able to snapshot a bunch of different damages into our ultimate, including overpower. And we're able to maintain those damage bonuses through each cast of our Cataclysm as long as we cast the Cataclysm before the first one expires. When we first get into a dungeon or before a boss fight, we're going to use our Maul to make sure that we're in Werebear form for 12 seconds. That's going to activate this passive here called Provocation. Provocation is going to give us a guaranteed overpower on our next ability use. Once those 12 seconds are up, we want to make sure that we're in the lightning damage bonus of elements, which you can see on your buff bar, and we also want to stand still for 3 seconds. As soon as we've done that, we want to hit Bulwark, which is going to activate our resonance, and it's also going to give us our conceded damage bonus. As soon as we've done all of that, that's when we cast our Cataclysm. Now that sounds like a lot, but you're only doing this one time unless you don't get your ultimate up in time, which means that you're basically doing 10 to 15 seconds of prep work to massively multiply your damage. Now once we've done all that, we can use our Blood Howl, and that's going to give us the guaranteed critical strike chance from our Waxing Gibbous. And that lasts for a solid 4 seconds. And keep in mind that Blood Howl's cooldown goes down pretty quickly as you're killing enemies. So you're actually going to be able to keep this up most of the time, except for on bosses. On bosses, it'll be closer to 1/3 uptime. So enemies are going to be dying from Cataclysm, and now you're going to be dashing to enemies with Shred. And as soon as you get to an enemy, you're going to use your Evade to trigger Flicker Step. That's going to reduce your ultimate cooldown by several seconds. It can be up to 10 seconds if you hit multiple enemies. And keep in mind, Flicker Step resets your Evade very quickly, so every time we use Shred, we're getting another dash right afterwards. Now something I'm going to be testing more and figuring out throughout the season is what helmet I want to recommend. Right now I went with Crown of Lucian, because technically if you're alternating between your Maul and your Shred before you cast the Cataclysm, you could get some extra damage from Lucian, and you'll get some extra damage from Quick Shift. But I think realistically, the best thing here is going to be an Uber, which would probably be Harlequin Crest for the cooldown reduction. Not to mention some nice damage reduction, and some stats that benefit overpower quite a bit. And just to reiterate one more time, you have to make sure that you are recasting your Cataclysm before the previous one expires. And there will be a little green bar above the skill on your skill bar that will indicate the duration that's left. So make sure you're always casting it before it drops below around that 25% mark. I've noticed that if I cast it when it's too close to expiring, it doesn't work. But if you do it early enough, you will carry the overpower and everything that you did in the beginning over to the next cast. And you can do that all the way through the dungeon for 15 minutes straight if you needed to. One thing to note, if you use Maul, it's going to end up giving you a new overpower, and a new overpower will change your overpower Cataclysm to a non-overpower Cataclysm for some reason. So after my first activation of Cataclysm, I don't use Maul anymore. For the Spirit Boons, I went with Wariness, Iron Feather, Avian Wrath, Calamity, and Overload. You can choose to go between Overload for a little more AoE damage, or Masochistic for a little more healing. Combo for the Storm doesn't really do anything for us because our ultimate doesn't seem to proc it hardly at all. But I do see quite a few overloads, so it at least does something. For the uniques and aspects that we haven't talked about yet, we've got Skinwalkers, which is helping us heal and maintain our Fortify. I think you could adjust your points to maintain your Fortify in another way, and that might allow you to add some more damage reduction here if you really needed to. But I think this one's a pretty nice option. We've got Tacits of Dawning Sky. These are just a really nice defensive pair of pants, and if you masterwork the maximum resistances quite a bit, it's going to be really strong. We're also using Eridas, which has a couple of nice effects. For one, it has a massive 20% cooldown reduction on ultimates, which is very handy for getting our ultimate back in time, which synergizes with the build in a couple of ways. For one, we're pulling enemies close to us, so that's going to increase the amount of damage we do. But it also benefits us by scaling our Thunderstruck legendary node on our Paragon boards. And between this and one temper with damage to distant enemies, we can cap out our Thunderstruck with just those and our Territorial Glyph. For our gems, we're running Ruby in our weapon, Ruby in our armor, and on our accessories, we have options here. But basically, you can run Diamond or a couple Skulls. You could run 3 individual resistances if you're early game and you don't have a lot of resist yet, for example, before you get Tacits of Dawning Sky. But realistically, you just need to hit your armor cap and your resistance caps. I have a bunch more info in the written guide if you want to go to the link under the video, but for now, let's get into the skill tree. So I went with Maul here just to activate our overpower. We've got 1 point in Shred going to Primal Shred to give us the dashes. We're maxing out Predatory Instinct and Digigrade Gate. We're going 1 point in Earthen Bulwark and 1 point in Enhanced Earthen Bulwark. 1 point in Cyclone Armor, going up to Preserving Cyclone Armor. We're going to max out Vigilance, and we're going to get 1 point in Blood Howl, going to Preserving Blood Howl. We're maxing out Nature's Reach. We're also maxing out Endless Tempest, Provocation, and Envenom. We're also putting 1 point in Toxic Claws. Then we're moving down. We're maxing out Defiance, putting 2 points in Circle of Life, and maxing out Resonance. Resonance is a very important one in this build because all of that is going to be snapshotted into our ultimate. So if you get a few extra points on your amulet, you're getting something like 45% damage increase. And of course, we're getting Cataclysm at both points. We're maxing out Defensive Posture, and also maxing out Heightened Senses. You can move around some points to get max quick shift if you're going to be alternating before casting your first Cataclysm, but I don't want the build to be too tedious, so I didn't include this as part of it. And for our Keystone passive, we're going with Ursign's Strength. Now, Ursign's Strength here is actually really good for us. We're getting 25% damage increase and 30% overpower increase, and both of these affect our ultimate. I also considered possibly wearing Insatiable Fury, even though not all of it synergizes with this build, because if you were able to get a big Ursign's Strength bonus on that chest piece, it could really contribute to the damage on this. And that chest piece adds quite a bit of tankiness to the build, so it might be worth it anyways. For our Paragon boards, on the starter board, we're going with Keeper. Then we're moving up and putting Heightened Malice, where we're getting Earth and Sky. We're moving left and putting our Constricting Tendrils board, which is going to be Territorial. Moving up from here, we're attaching Thunderstruck, and here we're putting Fulminate. To the right, we're going to put our Inner Beast board, and here we're putting Dominate. We're going to get our Heightened Malice node, and then in the very bottom left, we're going to be attaching Ancestral Guidance, and here we're putting Spirit. Here's what it looks like when it's all done. Now, I'm typically not a fan of builds that have a lot of setup, but the reason why I'm okay with this one is because you only have to do it once at the very beginning, and you're pretty easily able to maintain it throughout the entire dungeon, or throughout an entire pit, or throughout an entire Infernal Horde. There will be times that you don't get enough enemies around that you can dash through, but those chances will get lower and lower the more cooldown reduction you get as you're masterworking your gear. And even if it does drop off, it's not very hard. You basically just have to attack with your Maul, stay alive for 12 seconds, cast your Bulwark, and then cast your ultimate again. But I'm super excited to be able to share this build with you guys, and I hope you enjoy it. Again, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Make sure you let me know what you want to see. Daddy Druid out.
I wish my patience was as infinite as this cataclysm.